Welcome to the market recap presented by Tackle Trading. Get in the game.
Good afternoon, Tackle Traders, and hello, YouTube. This is Frank coming to you with the market recap for November 1st. The week gets started on the right foot. The month gets started on the right foot, right? If you will, as the bulls really continue to carry the day. We are still, of course, haven't really done anything too crazy in the market, but definitely a very strong day for the bulls here today, no doubt about that, as we actually saw the Dow Jones close back above the 200-day moving average, which certainly is not an easy thing to do. Certainly not the end-all be-all, but certainly a very positive development in the market. Of course, here this evening we have Apple's earnings. Unfortunately, there was nothing out there before the recap. I pushed it as long as I could, trying to see what the initial response, what the numbers were on Apple's earnings, but alas, we will have to check that a little bit later today. So obviously the market's going to be paying very close attention to those Apple earnings, no doubt. But of course, they're not the only S&P company coming out before tomorrow's open. I mean, you have Kraft Heinz, you have CBS, you have Exxon, Chevron, all around 30 or so from tonight and tomorrow, S&P companies reporting earnings. So certainly Apple's not the only one, but I think maybe at least for the next few hours, the world's going to feel like maybe they're the only one. Maybe that's just me, but that's kind of what the talk of the town is right now. Taking a look at our indexes, here we have the S&P. Obviously, we pushed up today. We gapped a little bit on the open and ran again, close kind of at the top. Whereas yesterday's candle really, we saw this market wide for the most part, sold off, late in the day. To show quite a bit of negative pressure right an hour or so before the close. We actually closed near the tops here today, which is a little bit exciting if you're a bull. One thing to keep in mind, and this is me, so take it for what you will, but whenever we're in these upward moves and these downward trends, what really matters to me is how it responds when it finally breaks intraday support. I mean, if you think about the last three, green candles as just a trend, and look at it from that point of view, it's really just been an upward trend. We've never broke down. We haven't made that M pattern, haven't broke support, things like that, or any major levels. And so when we're in these, what we often call bearish retracements or relief rallies, really until it is challenged, it's hard to get, for me at least, to get too excited about it. Now, as long as it continues to make higher highs and higher lows on a day-to-day basis, well, it can keep on running up. And if that leads us into a V-shaped recovery, where instead of, coming up and back down and up and back down and up and back down, we just shoot right back up, so be it. I don't ever expect that to happen. Of course, I don't know that anyone really ever expects a V-shaped recovery. Just sometimes it does, of course, happen. But I will be very interested in this next move. So I'm still looking at bearish retracement opportunities. As I've said the last couple of days, I'm still open to bullish trades. I just want to make sure I'm trading into strengths. Stocks that are, breaking resistance. I'm not trying to catch the bottom. I pick any stock over the last few days, and odds are as a bull, you've made some money because it's the market. Just like, the week before, as a bear, you made some money, right? Things are really moving with the market right now. No doubt about that. But I want to always be, at least in my own mind, maximizing my chances. So things that are breaking resistance, whether it's major or just a swing, I always prefer major, but that's what, of course, the bullish type of trades I'm looking for. Let's see what happens, because eventually it likely will. Maybe it happens tomorrow. We don't know. But let's see what happens when we actually break the previous day's low and see how bullish, the current crop of traders remain. Over on the NASDAQ, closed right there, smashed right into that 200-day moving average and called it a day. No terribly big surprise. That average is, oftentimes difficult to break. So no huge shock that that's kind of where we called her good today. Very similar situation, but a very strong day overall in tech. I mean, strong day overall, period. But in tech, definitely a good day. The Dow is definitely the most, bullish, gold star winner today, in my opinion, closing back on top, we broke through that 200 yesterday, carried over into today after kind of sliding off and closing right below it, pushing back through it, and this time around closing above it. Remember, when we're thinking about trend, our previous swing is way the heck up here on all of these indexes, right? So for a retracement, at least for my rules, that it has to break resistance. And right now, that is the major level of resistance, right? My expectations, I think a lot of traders' expectations are somewhere in the relatively near future. We're going to see some downward movement, whether they think that's a great bearish opportunity, not a good bearish opportunity. I think we expect that downward movement and then either place that higher low and push through to kind of give us that buy signal for the Santa Claus rally, if you will, or continue to work down and break to the downside yet again. Of course, that's what the trend has been doing. So do kind of keep that in mind as you're looking at your charts. A lot of these swings haven't been taken out by any stretch just yet. Over on the Russell, definitely the most intriguing bearish setup. Again, not today, certainly not tomorrow morning. Closed very strong at kind of that first challenge level we've been watching for, that previous swing low, lined up pretty nicely with that 20-day moving average. That doesn't have to be the end of the road, right? Because our major breakdown was back up through here, right? Our last major break of support. But this is certainly a swing level. This should be a challenge. No terribly huge surprise that this is kind of where we called it good here today. I wouldn't be surprised if this is as far as it goes. But again, the market is really always kind of doing the same thing, right? In the current environment, we're so volatile. Most things are all up, most things are all down. It's a great day, it's a terrible day, and so I wouldn't be surprised if we're able to carry this momentum, going into tomorrow to close the week out. Well, I think by default, if that's what happens, the Russell's going to push through this little swing, right? So again, let's watch and see what happens when we're challenged. But it's been a good few days, and those of us, and I know a lot of you guys and a lot of the folks over at Tackle Trading and the halftime crew, I've been watching for this retracement, and I hope everyone's been able to take good advantage of it and have some good opportunities developing for next week for potential bearish retracements if that's what we get. Materials really hopped today, an area that I've not been shy on. I do not particularly feel great about as a bull. Not that I think a lot of people do, but it really had a good day today. Gapped early and gapped pretty big, and of course closed pretty strong. It's not done enough to change my mind. But again, if we kind of talk about building positive things, I know a few days ago we talked about, breaking that 9. That's kind of that first thing, at least in my world, that has to be broken. Can't break above the 9, we're not going up, right? At least not very far. So that happened. And then you look at materials. Now we've closed above the 20. That's just another thing. It's not enough to get me to change my mind, but it is enough for me to start softening my stance, if you will. I didn't expect materials. I'm not surprised that they moved up with the market. I'm not surprised that they rallied up independently because they were so extended to the downside. But I am a little surprised how powerful it appears to me, at least, they've been. So they're definitely coming off of my most bearish list, or at least on their way right now. I'm definitely seeing some things, at least I look for, to give me an idea of changing the momentum. Over in energy, we're able to close on the positive, but not a whole lot of crazy activity. Crude, of course, broke down. That probably didn't do us any favors. We got Exxon, we got Chevron, to name the two biggest energy companies coming out tomorrow before the open with earnings. So that probably will have an impact on where we go from here. But we're kind of right there in the middle, of this old trading range. And I remember this trading range, and I probably talked to a couple of you about this trading range back in the spring, where we constantly went back and forth, and we're right back in there. And that's what, how I'm looking at the energy sector right now. Until it cleanly breaks one way or another, I'm looking at it as we've kind of gone back into that sideways type of a range. Not everyone has to agree with that, but we are kind of in the middle, whether you think we're in a sideways range longer term or not. We are kind of in the middle of our support and resistance zone, almost exactly in the middle right now in energy. So it'll be interesting to see, if we get a little bit of clarity one way or another with those big earnings coming out here tomorrow. Apple will get the headlines, but Exxon and Chevron, they're no no slouches either in the size of companies. Looking at the financials, kind of an interesting one to me from a theoretical, at least, sell off tomorrow. We kind of smashed into that old support level, smashed into that 20-day moving average, used it as resistance for now 2 days on the intraday in a row. Hypothetically, if we were to see downward movement, in the market tomorrow, this, to me at least, kind of looks like one of the areas that's closest to be, ready, if you will, for a bearish retracement. Now, obviously, that movement's going to matter, and I'm not saying that we all or any of us should jump in if this breaks today's low tomorrow, but just kind of looking at it from a charting perspective, it seems, I guess, more ready than some of the other things I've looked at, other areas I've looked at least in my opinion. We know that this was a pretty major support level that's lining up with that 20-day average. It's really kind of started to, doesn't seem like it had the steam that a lot of the other areas had today, right? And it makes sense. That was a pretty big support level that it took out here, when it broke down. So, that's going to be a challenge. Gets back on top of that, we can talk, but definitely interested in seeing how we play into tomorrow or into Monday. The price is right. If this were, if I had some confirmation candles, I could see a scenario where I'd be ready to go in to this tomorrow. Haven't got that. So I guess it doesn't matter that that's what I might want to do, but definitely the price is right, in my opinion, over in the financials for it to struggle. Industrials had a solid day moving, kind of along with the market. Again, while it's a much wider range maybe than we're seeing in our energy, we're kind of smack dab in the middle of, support and resistance. But again, remember, so many of these things, our previous swing highs are still way away from us. So kind of still in that upward swing, but still overall in that downward trend, just like everything, or pretty much, I guess not everything, but pretty much everything else is right now. As of course the NASDAQ did, so did the tech sector, closing right at that 200-day moving average. Pretty positive day in that sector, but again, kind of smashed. That's why it was kind of impressive that the Dow, we kind of see some of these other areas, that's just where they called it good. Breaking, it's not necessarily the biggest deal in the world, but it's not easy either. And that's why I think the Dow is, that's a positive development for our markets, not specifically tomorrow necessarily. But I do think, again, it's all about baby steps. Break the 9, break the 20, break the 50, break resistance, break the 200. Those are just small wins for each step of the way, right? So we're at least starting to see some of them. But again, for me, it's the next swing down. How do we respond to that? That's going to be where we're getting the information that I want. Was this, is this going to continue bearish, or are we going to get that Santa Claus rally? Over in staples, no surprise, we continue to do the dance around resistance, kind of worked up into that 55.50 area, that same intraday top that it's been using over the last couple of days. Yet again here today, kind of doing its, dance at resistance. I don't know if it's going to break it or if it's going to fail. I think we just have to continue to monitor this area because this has been a problematic zone, right? But again, if we can ever cleanly break through this, that would be a signal. We thought maybe we were going to get it a few days ago, just weren't able to get any carry through on it. And of course, now that top has become our line in the sand on the shorter term time frames because, well, now everybody's worried about that price tag. So let's continue to monitor that, see where we go from here in the staples. Utilities kind of came back down, tested that previous low, at least what I have the previous low for support here today. We're able to bounce off of it on the intraday. I think we're just going to have to kind of see. They're oftentimes, go the opposite of the market, right? As a defensive area. Not always. They can go up while the market's going up or down when the market's going down, of course. But they are, when the market's, selling off heavily, they are considered a safe haven. And so as, they've not been exciting. We've been getting sweet deals on Netflixes and, and all of those things, right, during the last few days. Who wants to go buy a boring utility stock in, strong days? So let's see how they respond to the next pullback in the market. But that support level will certainly be an price that I think we should be watching. Kind of the first step down. We still have, that swing right below us. But, it seems like they're just going to go with the market, right, as a general rule, or against the market, I guess, so to speak, on some level. Because, again, some of these, exciting names are really beat up. And if we get confidence that we've hit the bottom or we're going to turn around, most of us, that's what we're going to want, our favorite. Oh, I've been watching Netflix forever. They had that great earnings report, beat up with the market. When I finally get a good buy signal, yeah, it's Netflix. It's not boring, utility company. And again, maybe that's just me, but I think that's traders as a general rule. I think I'm not the only one that has that kind of a feeling about that stuff. So let's see how we operate as we move into tomorrow and into early next week when that next pullback happens. Let's see how interested folks are in the utilities. Healthcare, another good day over there, continuing off of that nice bounce of the 200. This is, of course, as we've talked before, one of my areas that I've trusted the most from that bullish perspective during this last few days run because of what I consider at least the relative strength of the sector, holding steady at the 200 where so many others failed. We're starting to work into those challenges, right? The previous swing low, we still have a 20. We haven't really seen any break of intraday support. Haven't broken today's low, tomorrow stuff. So, I don't think they're going to be immune to it by any means when that happens. But certainly a nice development over there. In discretionary, really nice bounce today too. They really didn't take much advantage of anything yesterday, but really showed well here today. Still closing below the average, kind of closing right at that 20. Still for me, again, one of those areas that today, and again, that can change, but today, certainly I feel a lot more comfortable about going into other areas, trading into this rally than this discretionary sector as a whole. But you have to appreciate, that was a good, solid move today, a lot of good momentum. Is it because they're so beat up? Because, they were getting beat up before the market really started this, right? The week or so before, we went from, potentially breaking out to breaking down before the market really started to sell off. So is it because there's a legitimate interest, or is it because they're so beat up, that, it's like some sweet deals? I don't know. It's going to have to do more to convince me that it's not just because it's beat up. So at least that's my take on it. Real estate kind of back and forth day. Doesn't seem like I'm the only one out there that's not a huge fan one way or the other on the real estate sector. Really haven't seen much of anything change here today from where we were yesterday or even the day before. Kind of know where resistance is up there, kind of around that 50-day moving average. We are continually making these higher lows. So we're seeing a little bit of conflicting signals. And yeah, for me, until I start to see otherwise, I'm just going to say I'm neutral and have no opinion. And I'm never afraid to say that. I'd rather look like a dummy than lose money on something I was guessing on. So lastly, our communication services, very flat today. Certainly did not take part. Didn't really do anything wrong, but certainly not able to take advantage of the rally day that we had in the market. I don't know what that means, but it's not, not going to call it positive. I'm not going to call it negative necessarily, but, it can't be a good thing that while other areas were really enjoying, people buying into them, yeah, they just kind of trickled into the communication services. So let's see how we go. Again, as we look at everything, nothing has been challenged. And that's the key thing to keep in mind. It's fine if we're buying into some of this stuff as long as it's reaching our goals. We're trading into strength, all of that fun stuff. In my opinion, at least, it's fine to be doing that. But we have to remember we're still in the same market, right? That challenge. When we're challenged, that's going to be, where I think we're going to get to see, is this something or is this, we all knew a relief rally was coming, right? We didn't know it was going to be a fast one, a small one. It was tomorrow, it was this week, but we all knew, right? And until we get a challenge, at least for me, that's how I'm going to continue to monitor this. But definitely, again, at the same time, while it hasn't done enough to get me to get off of the overall I'm bearish, you make me make a trade, I would go bearish broadly today. Seeing some positive things. You are seeing some positive things that are starting to make me feel at least a little bit better. Speaking of feeling a little bit better, those of us who have been, playing into that gold when it broke out, that 1220 a while back, definitely probably feel better today than they did yesterday as we came off strong of that old zone, that old breakout zone, and really ran all the way almost up to the highs of for a long time, right? This is how we've been for a while. This swing that we put in late last week. Continuing to hold that breakout point. Again, really, while today's an exciting day and there were some intraday opportunities for sure, really just like yesterday and the day before and the day before and the day before. I mean, really, the break there is what, traders are hanging their hats on. That continues to hold. And as long as that's the case, I think, well, I'm not going to change my mind. But now we have even more information that, yeah, that is, right? Seeing that bounce, that reaction off of that zone. Same with silver here, right? Seeing that reaction off of that zone. Now we have even more information. Yeah, we're not the only ones out there at that price point keeping an eye on it, right? We've now seen, a good chunk of money come back into these areas at that price to confirm what we already thought, right? That support is important in both of these metals currently. Another great day in silver. It's funny how it goes, nothing has really changed. It's been an interesting week, though, in the metals, right? There have been some down, and of course, obviously today, a huge, huge positive candle, but really patterns have not changed, right? The patterns have not changed. It's been kind of like Mr. Toad's wild ride in those markets. So really, again, for me, silver still at 15 is what I'm watching for. But if you're in already, I'm happy that you were able to move in or rally back today. But we're now back at those kind of short-term highs that we've been fighting with for quite a bit. So an exciting couple of days in silver, but really nothing's happened at the same time. Of course, the dollar pulling back might have had something to do with gold. Definitely a nice steep pullback over on the dollar. No terrible surprise that we pulled back, right? We were pretty extended. We recently just broke through some resistance, so showing a lot of strength. I think that 96 area is where a lot of traders are kind of looking at that next potential telling point, right? I would expect it to put up a fight if we get to 96. That would be a tempting price, testing that old breakout point back between the moving average. Whatever moving averages you use is going to be pretty darn close to that 20-day moving average when we get there. So 96, I think, is the number we're kind of watching as we move into next week on the dollar, but definitely some downward movement there today. But again, we were extended. We just pushed through some resistance, and well, I'm never going to fault anybody for taking profits in days like that. Over in the natural gas market, eked our way up a little bit more into that resistance zone, only to get smacked back down to nobody's surprise, right? We've seen this song and dance, whether we've been trading it directionally or not. I mean, this is the dance that natural gas has been doing for quite some time. So surprise, surprise, they did it again here today. Really, I mean, what's there to say? Nothing has really changed. We're still in this sideways market, playing pretty consistently off of those tops and those bottoms. And, again, for me, unless you're day trading, and that's a different story. Swing trading, I don't think this is a great environment to be swinging, but that's just me. Clearly, people have been doing it and doing well, So I get anybody who's selling at resistance, buying at support completely, and I wouldn't argue against that. I'm just, very volatile, but at the same time predictable. But I do think, signal-wise, it's the break, that we're all waiting for, and whether we're, day trading or playing the tops and bottoms or, selling credit trades, whatever it might be. I think that's kind of what we're all waiting for. Break one way or another to give us that signal for the next move. And lastly, our friends in crude, it went from bad to worse. Of course, yesterday we broke the swing. Today, wherever exactly we had that number or that zone, we broke it. We broke it on crude, and it really sold off heavily when that first happened. That's a pretty major level of support as we look at a weekly chart. This really illustrates it. I mean, this looks an awful lot like an M. And I think we might have looked at this before a week ago or something, but maybe we didn't. But that break of support is not a good thing. Now, we're not too far below it, so let's see how we respond tomorrow. But again, if we kind of have one of those days where we break today's low tomorrow, there's nothing there to hold it up, right? So if it wants to bounce back, fine. I'll still be bearish, and I'll be looking for bearish opportunities. And I certainly won't be bullish. That's for sure. It's got a ways to go to get me on the bullish train. But that break to a lot of traders, and I know certainly to me, that's a big break. That's a big break. We're only one day in. Again, we so oftentimes see with these breaks, it's how it responds that next candle, right? It closed below support, but so many times it doesn't break that intraday low. Or when we looked at the Staples breakout a few days ago, we broke out, but weren't able to break that high, and the breakout just died just then and there. So that movement is really the confirmation that I'm always looking for. How do we respond? We close below support. I understand everybody has stop losses there. That's not good. That's how we end up, having, these candles. But where do we go the day after? Well, I've got my thoughts on crude. I wouldn't bet bullish, but we'll have to see. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, that'll do it for the market recap here today. But an interesting day, strong day in the market, presenting some interesting opportunities, whether they were day trades, bullish trades, or setting up some bearish retracements, which all of a sudden a few days ago seemed like we weren't ever going to see bearish retracement candidates. All of a sudden today probably have more than we know what to do with. So it'd be interesting to see what happens when we're challenged. Does it happen tomorrow? I guess we'll find out and talk about it in tomorrow's recap. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, as always, it is certainly my pleasure, and I do appreciate everybody's time. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell, and be sure to follow us over at Tackle Trading on Twitter to keep up with some of the stuff that we're keeping an eye on over the day-to-day. If you enjoyed the market recap, it's always helpful and appreciated. If you give it a thumbs up, let us know we're on the right track. If you guys ever have something that you want to peek at during the market recap, but don't be afraid to let me know, and we'll try to squeeze it in there. If you're looking at anything interesting, well, hey, I'm game. I'm not afraid to steal charts from you. So don't be afraid. We're happy to look at that. With that, ladies and gentlemen, get the heck out of here. Happy trading, and I will see you in the next one.